Hello everyone, and welcome to another Tutorials. Today, I'm going to show you how you can set up a more dynamic camera overlay using predefined locations so that you can have one scene controlling where the thing is located, as well as scaling based on the location of that camera. That way, instead of having to reproduce the same effects on multiple scenes that you might have, you stick it all into one and you slap that on top. And that's primarily why I did it. I got tired of having to redo the same thing, move stuff around whenever I was playing a new game, having a new scene, or what have you. So I just designed this so I can have it wherever I need it, and if it's up here, I can just scale it really easily without having to potentially go and click off something. And also has some logic so it can move around based on the scale. So if I move it here, it keeps the scale. If I scale it down, I move it here, it keeps the scale as well. So all of that to say that it's pretty flexible for you, and it can also be modified, and I will show you how we can tweak it in case your particular overlay and all of the stuff is different, so you need something maybe not quite all the way at the top, maybe not quite all the way at the bottom, or what have you. We will review all of that. In order to do this particular tutorial, you will need several different pieces. The main one you will need is streamer.bot, which is a very powerful local bot you can run that controls pretty much everything in OBS. This is where all the logic will be controlled, and that's where we'll be mostly doing that stuff. I will review it a little bit, but it is rather involved if you're not familiar with programming and logic. We will need the WebSocket plugin for OBS, which is how it communicates to OBS and controls everything. You'll also need the Move Transition plugin, which is how the camera is moving. And I also recommend getting the source copy plugin for OBS Studio by Exceldro, as I will be providing a JSON file so you can just import the scene that already has all of the filters in there for you. There will be some things to do if you decide to use something besides a thing named camera, but we can review that later. And finally, I have exports for Touch Portal and also for Elgato Stream Deck. If you don't have either one of those things, you can also use hotkeys inside of StreamerBot. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and download everything we need. So here's where you will find StreamerBot. You will just download the latest version, and it will run locally from the wherever folder you extract it to. So nothing super complicated there. You can just stick it where you'd like and run it there. We'll also be picking up the WebSocket plugin. So if we go here to WebSocket, we want to get 4.9.1, go to download. And of course, if you have a regular Windows installation, then you can just download the installer. If you have it in a custom location or if you're using something other than Windows, you'll get the zip and drop it into your OBS folder. All the instructions should be here for that. Move transition, also more or less the same thing. You're just going to download the latest version here and install that into your OBS installation, whether with the installer or with just manually putting it in where it needs to go. As well as source copy, which thankfully is a rather straightforward plugin in and of itself. So all of that will be there. And if you happen to be using Touch Portal, you will not only download Touch Portal itself for the Windows, but you will also need to get a plugin in here listed for StreamerBot. I can locate it real quick. Oh, here it is. So you'll need to download this and install this into Touch Portal if you're using Touch Portal, and I'll show you that here in a minute. All right, so now that we have all that, I have myself a more or less basic OBS setup here, just with a media source as a background. And what we're going to do is we're going to be using the source copy plugin inside of tools, source copy, and we're going to load scene. And we're going to load the scene that I have made already. It will be providing to you to be cam grid scene. Just open up that JSON file. It will add this scene here. Let me go ahead and switch this to a camera that works so it looks correct. It also has a image mask on there, but you can use whatever you typically will do. I just did that for the effect. Now if we right click on the cam grid scene itself, we'll look at filters. You'll see there is a big old list of filters here, and all of these define the different locations for the camera. You shouldn't have to change any of these if you're just peeping at the basic setup. But if you are changing anything, this is where the stuff will be done. Again, we'll be reviewing that here in a minute. So with the scene in here and the filters ready to go, what we're gonna do is I have another little machine here running for this StreamerBot because I already have one running locally, so I can't run 2 instances on one machine. But if you look here in my OBS tab, we'll see that it is connected to this version or this instance of OBS. So you have to make sure it's connected before this will really do anything. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and import some actions. So I'm gonna be providing that here. It will be this first file. It's just a text file, camera files actions. And you will select all of this text here and copy it. And what we'll do is right click on this empty spot, import, paste that here. And it will give you a list of a bunch of actions. Make sure they're all checked and click import. And what that'll do is it'll pull all of these in here for you to use. Now, you can do these if you want them. They will work more or less off the bat. If you want to use hotkeys, that would be in the hotkeys tab. You would add a hotkey for whatever it is that you want it to do, and you will select the action that you want it to run. So, for instance, if I want it to go and move down here with the small, this is the southwest small location. So I would choose that pause, southwest small, right? And then I give it a hotkey, and I would do that for all the other locations. I'm not going to be doing it that way. I will actually be using a touch portal. And so the main thing you're going to need here, first off, before you start messing around with it, is you'll want to click on this. You'll need to go to import plugin, and you will import the plugin that we downloaded earlier for touch portal and StreamerBot. It'll ask if you want it to trust always, plugin imported, excellent. And then if you need to make sure it's connected, settings, plugins, right click on that, select the plugin. It is running. Yours will most likely be a local host, but if your OBS is running on a separate system, you'll put in the IP address of that system. This is the default port. Don't need to change anything there at the moment either, because we're using default settings for StreamerBot. So I'll close that. And what I'm going to do is click on this and import a page. And that, I'm going to use the tutorial move cam, TPZ, import page. And so now I have all of this here. And if I click on the cam northwest, that was also one thing I should mention inside of here. The server clients, make sure that you have auto start turned on and you start the server so that it's actually able to connect to it. So now if I click and select any of these, right? And I'm using Alt Shift to do it on the screen. Then it'll go to those positions, it scales from these locations. And if you want to, you can even shift it over manually, although it won't remember exactly where it is with those, it will with these. And I also have a button here included that does a toggle, so it zooms in and out, and it remembers where it's located. So if I move it down here, and I do that, zooms in, zooms out, and it'll go back to where it started. This is the one you want to use if you want it to zoom in and out, or you want to do certain effects. Like this one, for instance, which is just something fun, and it just randomly moves, randomly moves this thing around. But if I do it from here, and I run it again, it'll move around, and then when it's done, it will go back to the west location, small. And that's the basics of it. If you just want to use that, and it'll work just fine for your needs. But let's say you have a bunch of stuff in here, and your thing you use for your camera is not just named camera. For instance, you might have an entire scene with your camera and like a border and some other effects and things like that on it that's all nested inside of each other. So what we're going to do is we will go ahead and we'll make a scene first off. We'll just do cam scene, right? This could be named whatever you want. And we're going to go ahead and put that into our cam grid scene. We'll just select the cam scene there. And so now we can actually turn this other one off. Cam scene, let's add the camera. We'll need to right click on this and just change the filters. So we'll need to select the cam scene for each one of these. Now, if you do this, if you notice down here, it changed the transform information. So it defaulted it to whatever the current transformation information is. Now, if you want to do this quicker and you don't want to go in here and manually change each one of these, just delete this camera scene in the cam grid scene. And then the filters will have no other option but to choose the only other thing that's there. So it'll just, if you see it defaults that, but it did reset all of this stuff. So to fix that, what I have is I have a CSV file also located in the resources I will provide to you with the filter's name and the transform information that will take its place. So the first one don't really have to mess with because it's already full size, but for instance this one, we'll copy that and paste it here. Right, so now if I do this, it has that information. And then I will just continue doing the same thing for each one of these. I'll just speed this up while I go through the process. Okay, so now I got all these done. So it should move to each of these locations. And I can close that. And if I come back to StreamerBot, I can move it around. And of course, let me add the cam grid scene to here. And so we got our background, we got our location information, we can do all that. Now let's say you want to change something in particular because you have a piece of UI that maybe is down here at the bottom. So if it's down here, it would be covering something, right? We would go back to the cam grid scene, we select our camera, and we would shift it up until it's above whatever we're trying to not block. We'll open up the filters. And then we would find, this is the southwest small here. Get transform, and it'll get the current information from there. Now, if I look at it, I believe that's on Y. So the Y-axis is vertical and the X-axis is horizontal. So if you look right here, I have a 635 for the Y-axis, right? So let's say I want to move this over to the center. I can also right-click, transform, center horizontally. That one's already good, so that I'll need to go to south small, right? Get transform. Now if I want to move it over to the very edge, it might shift a little bit, so I could just change this Y, just paste that again, so it's just 635. Oh, not that one. Hold on. Well, that actually is correct, but that should be, the 635 should go on to the southeast small. So in 720, it would be 635. So now the south one goes here, the southeast will go here, and then the southwest would go here. Where is it? Here, okay. It's hard to see all the little stuff. I guess I should be using touch portal. That would probably be easier, wouldn't it? Look at that. See, that's the smart thing to do. Do it that way. Don't do it the first way I did it. So that would be how you modify that, and you would have to modify it as well to some extent for the medium scale. Because if I scaled up, you see it expands there. And maybe that's what you want. Maybe it's not a big deal because you don't use that one. I use this mostly for emphasis, and then this is the standard I typically use. But all that to say, it should work. And then, of course, you can shift it around with this. you know, and then you could have all these other ones. So if you need to change these locations, you would just move the camera around inside the cam grid scene to wherever you want that particular location to be and save the transform information. If you want to change the medium one, you can just scale up to the medium. And then the same thing process here where you need to move it up like that. And that would be the southwest medium. And the Y information will be different for the different scale because of how it counts, I think, from the top right, the top left, I should say, corner of what's what. But I haven't melted up the whole lot. Either way, though, like, so for now, if I do the small, you see it's not quite exact, but it's pretty close. So you'll have to just experiment with that and how you want it. By the way, once you've gotten that far, you can move stuff around, and then you'll be doing things exactly like what I'm doing here. And you'll be able to move them around, scale up, scale back down, wherever you might need it. If you're in the way, then it's not a big deal. You want to go into the center, and you want to just disappear for no reason, then you can totally do that. Why not? So, just interrupting here. When I was going through this, I realized I didn't really show you all that much inside of Touch Portal real quick. So, the main thing I wanted to show you, so for all these different directions, if you look in here, it's the cam direction, and then the equivalent direction, northwest, west, south, etc. Inside of Touch Portal, all of that is controlled here, right? So for most of those buttons, it's just calling these, and these are calling the location information down here. So you don't actually have to be calling each one of those things. And it actually would be the same case for probably most of the hotkeys as well. You would be using these up here primarily. So the scale small, scale medium, and scale full for these ones right here, right? And then you would be using the cam direction stuff for these ones right here. And the main reason I mentioned that is just so it's less confusing, because if you had to do all the ones, like all the different individual locations, that actually is a separate page that you can import into Touch Portal, which is this one, cam full, which just has a big old page of all of the locations roughly in their position, right? So that each one of these you can pick wherever you want it to be. But this is a lot more complicated and takes up a whole lot more space. So I didn't find it to be particularly easy to use. That's why I made this one, which is much more streamlined, so that if you need to move it around, you don't need to have a million buttons or have a whole page that's full of stuff to use it. So just want to splice this in here and we'll finish it off. So that's pretty much all of the different parts of that. I'm sure there will be something that you guys will run into, have some questions or whatnot. Feel free to ask them in the comments below, and yeah, hopefully I can answer your questions without too much trouble. I might have to figure out a good way to communicate with all you guys and what have you, but either way, I believe this should get you going, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.